Okay, now we're going to go through the testimony, and we'll have Don Burnett. Welcome to committee, President Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Don Burnett. I'm the interim president of the University of Idaho, and I have the honor of serving as chair of the Higher Education President's Council, which encompasses the presidents of all of Idaho's public post-secondary institutions. We thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your courtesies in scheduling and conducting this hearing. Many witnesses, as you know, have traveled long distances to be here, perhaps on both sides of the issue, and we would respectfully ask that the time constraints be administered with that in mind. Earlier this month, as you know, all members of the Higher Education President's Council joined the Idaho State Board of Education in expressing grave concern about and unanimous opposition to the proposed legislation that would substantially reduce the current authority of Idaho's post-secondary institutions to regulate firearms on campus. I'm authorized to say that the incoming president of the University of Idaho, Dr. Chuck Staben, joined the other presidents in taking this position. The governing boards of our post-secondary institutions and the presidents of those institutions are committed to providing a safe living, learning, and teaching environment for our students, faculty, staff, and visitors. You'll hear this morning how the University of Idaho is fulfilling this responsibility. We have engaged the services of a nationally recognized campus security consultant from whom you'll hear. You'll hear from the Moscow Chief of Police, from our University General Counsel, and from the President of the student body. I respectfully wish right now to emphasize the following points. First, sound public policy should keep the exercise of governmental authority close to the people and the institutions affected. As you heard in the NRA presentation of the proposed bill, it is narrower than the one that failed in 2011, but it would still cut back the authority of our post-secondary institutions to use their best judgment in coordination with local law enforcement authorities and with first responders on how to promote safety in the academic environment and in local circumstances. This bill would impose a statewide preclusion against these coordinated judgments and would substitute a statewide command. Second, sound public policy should be evidence-based. Currently, there is little rigorous empirical research. There's an abundance of anecdotes, but there's little rigorous empirical research on gun safety relating to college campuses, and what research does exist has not demonstrated that safety is enhanced by increasing the number of concealed carry weapons on campus. On the other hand, it is clear that the academic climate for the ordinary student would be affected. This proposed bill cannot achieve even its avowed purpose of deterring shooters or of enabling individuals to shoot back unless it results and is widely perceived on campus to result in the carrying of loaded weapons ready to use within seconds in our classrooms, laboratories, and other gathering places. That is not the kind of teaching and learning environment we should seek to foster. Third, sound public policy should not fix what is not broken. There's no such thing as 100% safety, of course, no matter what action may be taken on this bill. But college-age individuals face much lower risks of violent crime on college campuses than at off-campus locations, and Idaho's campuses, as noted earlier, generally are even safer than the campuses elsewhere. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude briefly.
Yeah, and you have, because of who you represent, both the university and the presidents, you have just please continue as long as you need.
I'm grateful for the accommodation. The fourth point is that higher education campuses present complex and sensitive issues. They should not be lumped together with other public places in which concealed carry of weapons is allowed. The United States Supreme Court, in upholding citizen rights under the Second Amendment, has noted that regulation is not precluded, especially in places of special sensitivity, such as schools and government facilities. Fifth, many of our campuses contain daycare facilities, and our campuses welcome many varieties of visitors, including K through 12 students in campus programs that are conducted in the very venues where this proposed legislation would apply. Moreover, many law enforcement experts, as you will hear, are concerned that a proliferation of firearms will make response by law enforcement authorities in a crisis situation, the split-second shoot or don't shoot situation, more complicated and more dangerous for themselves and for others. Finally, please let me close, if you will, on a personal note. I am an Idaho native. born in Pocatello. I grew up in Idaho. Firearms and hunting were a way of life in my family. I am a firearms owner. I've been a judge and a teacher as well as an academic administrator. My experience and common sense tell me that putting loaded, at-the-ready firearms in our classrooms, laboratories, and most other campus venues is simply not a good idea. The post-secondary education presidents appreciate the good faith of legislators and others who have expressed support for the proposed bill, but we join the State Board in respectfully and emphatically urging that the bill not be adopted. Meanwhile, we will continue to do our job of exploring and implementing best practices to maintain a positive and safe climate on Idaho's campuses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator Stinnett, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. My first concern is how two pieces of making this work. Many campus security isn't armed, and so you'll have more individuals armed. Do you feel like it would be required to have extra trained personnel to be on campus one? And do you feel like you would need to step up any kind of areas of entertainment to be monitoring more closely the doors, so make sure people aren't carrying, or where they're allowed to carry, they have the proper paperwork and permits?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I'll allow some experts who are coming forward to answer in more detail, but my quick answer to your question is that it would put a burden of training upon our personnel. They would be dealing with different crisis situations, with more participants, with more lethality than was true before. And I would also note that most law enforcement entities require their personnel to receive much more intense and much more frequent training on the use of firearms in crisis situations than is contemplated for students and even retired law enforcement personnel under this bill.
Mr. Chairman, one follow-up.
Go ahead.
Would that be a considerable added expense to the university to make this possible?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I believe it would be a substantial expense.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Then Dr. Kimberly McAdams.
Thank you. I am in favor of this bill. The proposed bill could not be any more timely. On Monday, January 27th, my life was threatened by a former student. Police were called in on a suicide attempt during which the individual quickly shifted from threats of suicide to threats toward my life. I was explicitly told by police officers that the individual had wanted to come to campus to shoot me. I was told by police that he was going to be in custody at Intermountain Hospital, but I had actually been informed on Monday of this week that he has been released yesterday. I shudder to think what would happen in the worst case scenario, particularly if this individual had snapped a little bit earlier on Monday the 27th. My abnormal psychology class meets on Mondays from 3 to 4:15. We are in a classroom where there is only one door and no windows. If the individual had come to campus with the intent on killing me, there would have been no way for me to escape with my life, and nor would have my students had the opportunity to escape with their lives. The only way we would have had a fighting chance is if one of us in that classroom had been armed and had been able to protect ourselves. People like the individual who had threatened my life are not lucid enough to understand what they are doing when they are going through a manic or a psychotic episode. They do not value life, and there is no reasoning with them. They become fixated on the task they believe they are supposed to complete, and there's just no reasoning with them. There's no stopping them. And as a professor of abnormal psychology, I know what occurs during these psychotic episodes, during these manic episodes. Furthermore, I want to explain that although I respectfully disagree with the presidents of the colleges and universities in Idaho, I want you to acknowledge that they are not the ones directly in the line of fire. They are not the ones in the classroom. They are not the ones that are faced consistently with this terror of if the worst case scenario happens, what am I going to do to protect the lives of myself and my students? Please give me a fighting chance of saving my life and the lives of my students. In regards to this individual, he was in my classroom, in 2 of my classes in fall of 2012. I've had no interaction with him since then, but he has been fixated on me. I've had no contact with him. I don't know who his friends and his family are. If there is some kind of additional mental breakdown once he goes off of his medications, I've been informed that the reason why he had this breakdown in the first place is because he went off of his meds. There's going to be no one to warn me. I was fortunate enough that the police had been called in on this suicide attempt. If there's no one to catch him this next time, I don't know what is going to happen to me if I'm going to be able to survive. The only way I'm going to have a fighting chance is if you allow me to be armed within the classroom, as well as those of my students. For the sake of myself, my students, and my coworkers, please give us the chance to be able to save our own lives if this individual or someone else like him decides to take out his anger on campus. If the only resource I have to save my life is to exit through the one door that the perpetrator is standing in, I don't like those odds. Neither myself nor my students are going to be able to escape with our lives. So please consider supporting Senate Bill 1254. My life depends on it.
Great, thank you. I should have indicated before, when people testify, if you just indicate who you are and who you represent. And Dr. Adams, as I understand it, you are a BSU professor and you come here representing yourself.
Right, I'm representing myself. I teach psychology at Boise State.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
if I may, since you are a professional within psychology at the university, and you mentioned mental illness, do you have a sense of the percentage of mental illness on the campus?
I currently am not aware of the statistics. It probably would be better to talk to the counseling department on campus.
Thank you. Other questions? All right. Thank you for
Oh,
testifying.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm slow on the button. Come back, come
I'm
back,
sorry,
come back, come back, come back.
I'm sorry, we had one. I'm probably not keeping my eyes up enough, but go ahead.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Sit away.
Thank you for that presentation. Are you proficient with firearms?
I currently am not, but I have gone to Boise Gun Company to get information on classes. I would not bring a firearm to campus unless I felt comfortable, unless I've gone through the training in order to feel proficient with it. Additionally, if I were to purchase a firearm for self-defense, I would obtain a firearm that has a laser on it, so I would be able to see exactly where my bullet is going to end up, so it would minimize the risk of having it fly in a different direction, as has been previously discussed.
And prior, Mr. Chairman,
ahead.
sorry. And prior to this occurrence, have you ever wanted to have a concealed weapon?
I have, and I have been to a firing range before.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other questions? All right, thank you for your testimony. Bob Van Arnhem.
Losing its grandfather status would then require implementing other benefits that are currently not included. You would either, if you didn't fund this, it'd have to come out of somewhere.
I'm Bob Van Arnhem. I'm a citizen representing myself. You've given me a couple hard acts to follow. One of the things in looking at this issue I've found is that there are 21 states that have that ban carrying concealed weapons on campuses, and 23 states allow the decision to be made by universities. And then 6 states, as the NRA representative stated, allow concealed weapons. I'm just wondering if any of you have talked to your colleagues in other states, especially those 6 who allow concealed weapons, to see if there have been any unintended consequences or costs associated with them. And as indicated by the interim president, as I recall, he indicated there would be additional costs. Of the mass shootings that have occurred, the 10 deadliest, more than half of the shooters were suicidal. So the argument has been put forth that concealed carry would serve as a deterrent, and that's directly from one of the senators in another conversation. I really don't think a person bent on mass killing who is maniacal is going to give a lot of thought to whether a concealed weapons policy is in place on campus or not. He's just out to take a lot of lives as quickly as he can, commit suicide. You know, the people in the trenches have to live with the policies that you set, and it seems to me that if you have a unanimous decision by the State Board of Education and university presidents to disallow this policy, that you ought to listen to them, because they're closest to the situation, notwithstanding the testimony you just heard from the professor. I think it's a stretch of the Second Amendment to advocate that any time, any place, under any circumstances justifies carrying a weapon. I think at times, frankly, that the attitude toward guns becomes almost idolatrous. And lest anyone put me in a box here or think they have me figured out, I'm a lifelong member of the Republican choir, as God is my witness. I've considered myself a fiscal and social conservative, but I think there's room for balance and reason when it comes to a deadly weapon that can kill innocent people, put in a circumstance of a college campus. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Questions? Great, thank you for your testimony, sir.
Okay.
Of Tony Snesko.